Okay, so thank you everybody for attending today. This session at 2:30 is going to be the Power Hour session with LSU's Vice President of Strategy, Mr. Mark D. Beiger. All questions, we asked will be fielded at the end of the session. And if you wish, we will have closed captioning available today. So how you will activate that is by selecting the live transcript option and showing subtitles during today's session. Thank you again for joining today, and Mr. Beiger, you're all set.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is, like Jonathan introduced, Mark Beiger. I'm the Vice President for Strategy here at LSU, a relative a new arrival to the team last fall. And really excited to be here, and really excited about this next hour. So I hope the Power Hour lives up to the to the name and the hype. And Zoom's a tough medium to do this kind of stuff, but really excited to be spending this time with you. At the end, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to to engage in that way if you desire. But Jonathan, if you'd flip to the next slide. I've been here about about 8 months here at LSU. I was at University of South Carolina for a little under 2 years prior to that. I was at West Point for about almost 3 years prior to that. And then before, I'm just kind of going backwards in time, I was in the Army for about just under 30 years. I'll talk a little bit about that just as it applies maybe to some of my comments today. But so a nice career, a good path, I think. But my most proud part of my life are on the screen right now, and I thought I'd give a little introduction to my family. The picture on the left of the screen is my 3 boys. My wife, I should have started with her, but my wife, Amy, and our 3 boys, and 2 of their wives. So that's our close family. We're blessed and lucky enough to have 2 little granddaughters on the right side of the screen, living with that oldest son and his wife right there in the middle of the picture. And then we've got another one on the way. I just say that I just open up with that just to give a little bit of perspective. And for me, most important in my life are the people that are on this screen and our extended family. And they're a huge part of course, who we are. But when we're talking about leadership, when we're talking about kind of life journeys, it's really good, at least for me personally, to kind of put things in perspective. Because at the end of the day, these are the individuals that are most important. So that's a little bit of just a quick snapshot of who I am. This next slide, Jonathan, if you don't mind, goes a little bit deeper, and I'm just giving this to you just so we can get to know each other a little bit better. But this gives some context to maybe my 30 plus years after graduation from college. And you can see some of the key dates and what I would call life moments there on the top of the screen. From graduating West Point in '91, kind of through my military career up until I retired in December 19. The interesting thing for me, as I think about the last 30 years or so, and I try to capture it there at the bottom of the screen in the timeline, is that what I would consider life moments are all laid out there. The births of our children, my wedding day, a couple of big moments in my Army career. When I laid out all those out on the timeline, you can see the density of those. For the mathematicians in the group, the density in terms of those life moments are really the middle third of that timeline. So the first 20 or so years at home, trying to stay out of trouble, get through high school, and the next 20 years is really where those life moments, start to materialize and appear. And I know for you all, you're right in the middle of that. You're experiencing those, life moments as they appear. My main point out of this is, the middle third, or the middle 22 years or so, a really, really important time. You don't need me to say that, on this Power Hour, but it's really incredible for me anyway, to look back in perspective, because as you're making your way through those middle 22 years, it's hard to see those sometimes. And I'll come to this a little bit later in the conversation. But when I look back, of course, no regrets. But I think I might have had a little bit different perspective if I would have really given it some thought about how important those middle 22 years are, not just to a career, not just to a profession, but to life. And so anyway, I just want to give these first two slides and just to give you a sort of introduction of where I'm coming from. Nothing too fancy. Next slide, please, Jonathan. So this gets into a little bit of my talk on leadership, and I've got some stuff there in the middle of the frame that describe, obvious, maybe not so obvious, but descriptions of leadership versus management, maybe. And there's books, there's articles. I mean, there's tons of literature on this topic. I wanted to start from this point in talking about leadership because, again, after my 30 years or so in the Army, and then lucky enough, my last 3 years or so, if you include West Point, maybe 6 years in higher education, it's really interesting to think about, leadership styles. And I again, lucky enough to be able to see that in two very important professions. And I'm going to focus, most of my thinking and comments on higher education as it applies to our students. But it's an interesting exercise to just kind of look on the left and right of this and just make your own personal, sort of self-assessment. You may be responsible for, 3 individuals. You may be responsible for 300, depending on, where you sit in the nation and what your responsibilities are. But it's really interesting to think about the leader you are today and the leader you would like to, grow and develop, over the course of your career. And you can kind of see, some of these things, the themes that pop out easily, at least in this description that I've got up on the screen. Leadership, more looking towards the future. Management, really sort of day to day, kind of just getting things done as necessary. Leadership, more on the how you can help others, be successful. Your success through their success in what they're doing every day. Management, maybe a little bit more controlling, a little bit more, what absolutely needs to get done. You as an individual. I just put those as backdrop because that kind of gets into the heart of what I wanted to talk with you all today about. And in my lifetime, as I'm looking at leaders, good and bad, managers, maybe good and bad, all from my perspective, of course. I've come to the conclusion that the great leaders, the great managers, and they don't have to be, two distinct groups, really have talents in 3 very, very important areas. And I summarize them with these 3 P's at the bottom right of the screen. And that's purpose and people and passion. And I came to this, probably midway through the military career, kind of at, I don't know if anybody's familiar with military ranks, but like at, maybe the captain, major, sort of, kind of in a mid-career on the military side. Those 3 areas were really, really important. And I'll talk about a little bit here shortly, but purpose, people, and passion. And for me, as I was kind of measuring my own success in any specific position, in my own self-reflection, I would inevitably, consciously or not, come back to these 3 ideas on purpose, people, and passion. So next slide, please. Purpose, I've just put a couple bullets there on the left side of the slide to just kind of give a flavor for what I'm talking about. But before really talking about those descriptors, in my experience, again, heavy on the military side, it didn't matter if you were leading a very small organization. I was in the infantry, so it was a very important part of our, of what we were doing. It didn't matter if you were leading a very small organization or if you, had a large organization, 4,000, and maybe more. The people that you were interacting with could get things done and would do normally what you asked of them. But in order for them to reach, full expectations, like one of the bullets, and ideally exceed these expectations, they had to understand, what the purpose of what we were collectively trying to get done. And I described that in a couple of different ways, but in my mind, purpose is vision and direction. And this, I think, it transcends professions. It doesn't matter if you're, working at Rutgers University. It doesn't matter if you're working in, local or state government, if you're educating at the K through 12 level, if you're coaching a team, if you're, responsible as a general manager of an organization. Vision and direction are absolutes with respect to leadership, in my opinion. And I won't cover all of these 6 bullets. I'd love to, if you had any questions on them. But the 2 that I wanted to highlight were the second bullet there, and then the 6th bullet. The second bullet, and I good or bad in the military, we switch positions and move all over the place. So you're you're constantly in a process of building a team, or building a group together. The challenge to that is you're gathering these groups on a consistent basis, and not everyone's come together with the same perspectives, the same identity maybe, and clearly not the same shared values. So it was always very important to me, regardless of the size of the group that I was responsible for, I was interacting with, was to gain some level of understanding of what individually the strengths that we were bringing to the team, but then to consciously discuss what our shared values were, or what they should be. And that exercise alone, I would offer up to anybody coming brand new, or even if you've been, responsible for organization for years or even decades. It's always a good exercise, mentally and emotionally, to sit down and talk about, what it is we believe in as a group, what it is we stand for, who we are. Those kind of exercises, they just they pay for themselves in terms of time and impact, immeasurably, inordinately, to the time that you invest in it. The last one, in terms of purpose and vision and direction, the times especially in the last 5 years or so in higher education, I've really been fascinated by the idea of shared governance, which exists in every organization, military as well. But one of the key aspects, I think, of shared governance and just leadership, if I'm sitting in a room responsible for, let's say you have 15 direct reports, 7 direct reports, the number is probably not, and you're communicating to them about what you need to get done this quarter, this year, 5 years, whatever. If everybody in that room doesn't hear or see or feel themselves as a part of the plan, then it's off. And I've made that mistake personally, but I've seen that occur many times, over the, even the last 5 years, but over the course of, 30 plus years. When you're, in this quote, I can't even really attribute it, but I just heard it in a conversation, and I'd like to share it, is the idea that if you're painting a future, which I thought was a nice visual, everybody that you're communicating that future to has to see themselves in that visual. And if you're not able to do that, then the plan is probably not right. And you need to kind of go back and kind of reset and make sure that but once you're able to accomplish that, and again, everybody in the group sees themselves, wow, I mean, watch out, that anything is possible at that point. And if the shared values are true, people can kind of see themselves in where we're trying to go. And there's some inspiration in there, it's game over, and it's exciting. So that's what I would say is in purpose. The next slide goes into the next big area for me anyway, and that's people. I just, studying leadership for so many years now, it cracks me up sometimes when I hear it kind of, leadership being a little bit overcomplicated. You've got technology, you've got equipment, and in different possessions or professions. You've got facilities, all the resources that goes into all this stuff. All the kind of the tangibles, that are a part of leadership. But at the end of the day, the most important resource is our people. It's human capital, if you want to, call it that. But you're not going to you can get some stuff done by yourself, and you have to as a part of life. But you're not going to get anything done of real impact without amazing people around you. Again, back to the previous part of the discussion, sharing in purpose and wanting collectively to get something of real impact, done. So there's a couple of descriptors there on the left side of the slide, but there's a really sort of a second or third grade picture on the right side of the slide. I tried to do some animations, but it took too long and it was terrible. So I just went, put the little stick figures up there and so one aspect of leadership in terms of people is communication. And you don't need me to talk, because I know everyone on this call have probably studied this, in detail. But communication, the challenges of just making sure what I think I'm saying and I'm talking, even now as we're in this hour of power, and what is being received and how it's being perceived. That's a whole art and science, and another discussion. I wanted to focus on kind of the last two pieces of, in my mind, communication, just for today. The one is empathetic empathy, and that's the idea that, and the leaders that I've seen that have this quality, I think are some of the best that I've been around, and those are the ones that before words come out of their mouth, before they start talking about solving problems or the direction we're moving, they have a very, very clear understanding of the people that they're talking to, audience or organization, and they can kind of put themselves in the perspective or the shoes of who they're working with in terms of empathy. And that goes to the last bullet. The last bullet in terms of reach and echo is something we're working really hard here at LSU, and that's the idea that today or tomorrow or next week, we'll communicate with a certain group, either inside our organization or outside our organization. And that's a challenge in and of itself, to make sure that communication is effective and it's well received. The harder part, kind of the higher order or the PhD level in terms of communication, is trying to imagine and think through what the reach can be, should be, and might be of those communications. How far do you want that to reach? And echo is another, kind of just a nice little buzzword to throw. Where does the communication, after I talk with this group or this individual, where is that going to go? To positive or negative effect? Is the message clear enough and simple enough that it can be, carried forward, with clarity and impact? That's a whole other piece of this, but so important. And I think if you love being a leader, regardless of the organization, higher education is an amazing place to one, develop as a leader, to work on your communications, and to take care of the people that are around you. So the last one here, I started with purpose, then people, and the last one is passion. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit of my passion, but I know Zoom is terrible. So I'm just gonna kind of talk through two pieces of this. If I were to line up the hundreds of leaders that I worked for, over the years, the trend, or the ones that really stand out in my mind, are the ones that were passionate, that just loved what they were doing, cared about the people that were around them, laser focused on what we were trying to do as a group. But every single day came to work or came to wherever we were with an energy and an excitement that was infectious. And when you're working for somebody like that, you can't help but be excited the night before about, what time do I need to be in? How do I be, all that kind of stuff. And that energy is really, being fed, a little bit maybe internally, but probably by the people that you're working for around. I would challenge you, I don't know how many we have gathered here today. I would challenge you just to really think about that point. Whether you're responsible for, again, 3 people or 300 or 3,000, the energy that they're going to feel and thrive on is the energy that you bring every single day. If you come to that office or that gym or that training room or that boardroom or wherever you're working, if you bring the energy and excitement, and not like crazy, sort of, not over the top stuff, but just a genuine desire to make a positive impact on the organization every day, people are going to feed off that. Your people will feed off that. And that's not easy to do because we're human beings. We've got good days and bad days, but the energy you bring in every single day will be shared, I promise you, and you know this, by the people around you. The last thing though, and that's what the little fancy graphic at the bottom is really work hard to maintain balance. Going back to that second image that I showed you, my little life path. I don't know if I had good balance. I think I did okay. My wife would know the best, but especially when you're in the middle of that career or the middle of that life, really, and those life moments are coming, really, as a leader, you have to work hard to maintain the balance, to take care of yourself, number one, healthy and spiritually and all that, but then to make sure that you're taking care of your loved ones. But by the example you set in doing so, everyone else feels comfortable and confident to be able to do the same. So you're affecting not only the balance and the well-being of you and the ones you love, but the people that are very important to you there in the workspace. Okay, this is an interesting one. I'm taking a little bit of sidestep. Let me just do a quick time check. Okay, this is a little bit of a sidestep from the previous 3 slides, but this is a wonderful book and a concept that I just wanted to try to communicate in terms of leadership that I have. I stumbled upon this probably 2005, 2006, and it's a wonderful book. You see the title there at the bottom and the author. There's many leadership lessons that pop out of this discussion. There's 2 triangles here that I'm going to try to do my best to describe because I think it's such a powerful concept. But the book by Hunter is still widely read and available. Some of you may have already read it. The idea in the center with these 2 triangles, and I'll be real quick on this, is that most of our organizations, regardless of which where you're at in terms of private or public or service oriented, most organizations are hierarchical in nature. There's a boss at the top, or a president, or a general manager, or a CEO, or a coach, and then there's that individual, he or she has some number of direct reports. Those direct reports have direct reports. An organization, if you were to draw it out, usually takes the shape of this kind of a natural triangle on the screen. The challenging part for most organizations, at least what I've seen, is that and again, most organizations are organized like this. They rely predominantly on the skill and the capacity of the people at the top, the CEO or the president, or his or her small group of leaders at the top. And if they're brilliant, if they're great, then the organization is probably doing great. If they're not, and they're struggling, or they have other priorities, or whatever the case may be, the organization is probably not doing very well. Sometimes, on rare occasions, the organization itself, the employees kind of at the bottom of that triangle, can overcome a bad leader or leaders or a chain of leaders, and they can keep the organization moving in a very positive direction. But it's not the kind of the norm, and it's not natural, and it's not easy. But that's most organizations. Mr. Hunter writes, and part of his thoughts are, the best organizations and the best leadership style perhaps is one that takes his triangle and attempts to flip it upside down. So now imagine the leader is at the bottom, the CEO, the president, general manager, coach. And every day he or she, as they're coming into their workspace, their focus Oh, I missed a huge part. Sorry, I missed a huge part on the previous triangle. Forgive me. On the previous triangle, the challenge with that triangle, again, back to the pace of the organization, is that everybody in the organization at the bottom of that triangle is looking up at what the boss wants. What's the president saying now? What's the CEO saying now? So they move kind of at the pace of what that leader is telling them to do. And that kind of drives, the success or not of the organization, big part. When you get to the triangle on the right side, if the leader flips that or is able to flip it in terms of the culture in the organization, and then he or she is looking at the direct reports every day and saying, what do you need to be successful? You don't have to physically say that, but they're just mentally thinking, what do you need to be successful? And those direct reports or those leaders are doing the same with the people that work, for or around them. And it continues to where the most important person in the organization is not the CEO, but the worker at the top of this organization now is the most important, because they're the ones that are delivering the mission on a daily basis, whatever that mission, whatever that purpose may be. And the theory goes that if you can kind of flip that in people's minds, you're not moving at the pace of one individual, you're moving at the pace of an organization that's truly, truly empowered. And that's where it gets exciting. And that's where the organization really starts to meet expectations, and then exceed expectations, which is exciting. You all may be a part of organizations like that are either consciously or not unconsciously operating that way, and hopefully seeing those kind of results. The downside to that organization, maybe, I'm kind of being facetious, but the downside of that organization is that the leaders are so good and so capable that they're being recruited, by whoever else, so it's hard to hold on to them. But on the flip side, they've mentored and they developed the people that are working for them, so the organization doesn't slip, when they run off to, do something different. It's really a neat book. I would just offer it to you. It's an easy read on a plane ride or over the course of a couple weekends, and it's just one of those that stuck with me for many, many years. Okay, next, please, Jonathan. I'm just going to close with 3 quick stories that I just want to share, from one person's perspective. Again, and for me, it's all about purpose, people, and passion. But these 3 stories I'm just going to share with you are individuals that I clearly see in sort of these in these areas, and they exhibit the qualities that are up on this slide in ways that I've never seen before, and I probably will never see again. The first story is yeah, please, John, you can do it. Yeah. So this is me back in the Army days. This picture was taken in late 2004. The gentleman on the left of the screen was my boss at the time, a Lieutenant Colonel Eric Carilla. Now he's a 4-star general in the Army, and just took over our U.S. Central Command down in Tampa, Florida. He is an amazing leader. I mean, and one of my personal heroes. I'm going to talk about 3 of them today, but one of my personal heroes. And the reason I wanted to kind of share the story with you is, well, sometimes stories like this don't really get out. But Eric Carilla was commanding a battalion of about 800 plus soldiers with a ton of attachments in Mosul, Iraq, 04-05. Very difficult time in Iraq, very dangerous, lots of just, dangerous activity. And I won't go into the details of all the, the exchanges there, but it was extremely violent. It was just a difficult environment to operate in. But this man, on a base there, you can kind of see the walls, that were protecting some of our living shelters. Basically, exemplified personal, physical, moral courage in ways that you can't even quantify. And on one particular day, one terrible loss for our unit, in a situation that many units, many Army, Marine, any service organization might need to take a pause and really slow down a little bit. and I'm talking in kind of just generalities. Eric Carilla knew that in order for this organization to continue in this environment, they had to see purpose, they had to believe, and they had to feel and possess courage. So Colonel Carilla, now General Carilla, gathered this organization after some pretty violent losses, pulled them together, and not with anything magical besides his words, his will, and his courage, was able to get that infantry striker organization back on its feet and moving in a very positive and aggressive manner, to the point where, as we were getting ready to leave Iraq, things had gotten much better in that part of the world. I could go into much more detail, but this courage is not unique to the military. It's not unique to a striker organization in Mosul, Iraq. I personally believe that kind of courage exists every single day in everything we're doing, whether you're, again, in a classroom, in an office, in a gymnasium, a training room, a boardroom, whatever. Every one of us is faced with difficult decisions and challenging moments. The personal courage, much like the energy I talked about earlier that you bring to that team, will inspire and motivate those around you to, one, try to be as courageous as you are in that moment, and two, to live up to your expectations. So I would just share that courage is a hugely important part of leadership that, again, transcends the profession. This next slide is not so, or these next pictures are maybe not as, difficult for me anyway to talk about. But this gentleman, some of you may know, there may be some teammates here on the call from North Carolina State, but this is Boo Corrigan. He's the athletic director out at NC State, and his family on the left, incredible. Boo and one of our generals on the right. I got to work very closely with Mr. Corrigan when he was the AD up at West Point those couple of years. And the reason I've got his pictures up on the slide, and back to a couple of the words I talked earlier in terms of people and then teamwork, is that I was still in the Army, working up as the chief of staff at West Point, and Boo Corrigan was a athletic director of West Point, really reshaping and changing the culture in the organization and helping West Point get into a place of strength athletically, and just in terms of culture. The neat thing about this is that at West Point, I don't know what the percentage may be, 80% military, 20% sort of civilian in terms of faculty, and then of course our athletic department. Boo Corrigan was one of those rare individuals. It didn't matter what he was wearing. He didn't have to have an Army uniform. He didn't have to have, stars on his shoulder. He didn't have to have some Army rank to be able to lead that organization. Boo led because he got people together. He got that sort of, shared perspective. He got consensus, and then he led. He led us to a better place. He led West Point to a more successful, not just in athletics, but transcending all parts of the mission up there of that military academy. And he made everybody around him better, which I just thought was amazing. I felt like I was getting better as a part of just being around him. But here's a giant of a leader, amazing impact on that organization. Of course, West Point sadly lost him, and he went to NC State, and he's doing the same thing down there for the Wolfpack. But just another amazing aspect, which I would say is firmly in that category of people, and in Boo's case, teamwork. The last one is my boss here at Louisiana State University, and this is President William Tate IV. Just taken over LSU last summer as president of the university and the system here in Louisiana. I was very lucky enough to be working for him, really at our previous location, University of South Carolina. He was the provost, incredibly popular, a lifetime of dedication to higher education and to discovery and to learning. And what I saw him do there at USC was nothing short of incredible. In every aspect of a provost job. And I'm personally, so I'm relatively new to higher education. I think the provosts and our deans, all of our faculty have just incredibly challenging jobs, but the provost in particular, that thing is not easy. But President Tate, then Provost Tate, came into that organization and he began to immediately change culture and inspire those around him, and to build a team that I felt was one of the, we could stack up against anybody in the nation, just in terms of what I believe to be our strengths there at the university. And the exciting thing about President Tate and then Provost Tate was he didn't do this with special effects. He didn't have some kind of, it wasn't a PowerPoint brief or some video or something. It was truly the force of his character that was having a very, very positive impact on the university. And because it's a flagship and because of its presence across and impact across the state, he was having an amazing impact on the state of South Carolina. LSU was lucky enough to bring him over to be the president. And he's been here a little bit less than a year, but the same thing is occurring. And it's just really exciting to be a part of a team like that. And I'm not really just saying this just because I want to brag about my boss, but the idea of passion, the idea of character, integrity, all of those qualities that are easy to just kind of to throw around. When you see it in a person, and it inspires those around him, to do the same. So I'm going to close with that, really just by saying, I hope, some of what I said resonated with you, and maybe I gave you some new thoughts and ideas. But for me, it's all about purpose, people, and passion. And while higher education, our student athletes, they give us such an amazing opportunity to find that, hopefully for all of us, to find that purpose, to work with some amazing people, and to bring that passion every day. So thanks for your time. Hopefully that was okay for a Friday afternoon. But if you have any questions, I'm glad to give it a shot. Any questions at all? I know there's a lot of purple on the screen and in my background. That might be.
Do you think I see one question from, I believe it was from Tambria?
All righty.
See if I could see.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Tambria.
So I was just curious as to how you handled the different transitions between your roles as far as being a leader and kind of shifting, like, I guess, like the type of people you were working with, like what was the hardest part of that and how did you handle that transition?
That's a great question, Tambria. Was that Southern in the background? Was that what was I couldn't see that. All I saw was, where you call?
Southern University.
Excellent. Well, maybe we'll cross paths here soon.
Perhaps.
Great question. And so in the military, we're moving every 2 or 3 years, sometimes more. So it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because you do have to, really try to get good at this, of the transition of, getting to know the organization and the people around you. The bad thing though, there is some real benefit to having people in the organization that have been there a long time, because they know the culture, they know the organization. They're so incredibly effective and knowledgeable that there's sort of this. It's good to get new people, to get some new ideas, but it's also great to have those that have been in one location for decades. But back to your question, for me, because I had to do it so often, I feel pretty comfortable when I went to University of South Carolina, first of all, thankfully, the people there were amazing. You know, here's this Army guy, you know, coming in from West Point. But they were, what I found is, as you get to the organization, I quickly try to get and meet as many as I can. You know, and you get that from the org charts, or, you know, just wherever you're at, you know, in terms of the organization. And I always try to meet them at their location, and really just listen. And I'm an avid note taker. So as they're talking, I know sometimes it's hopefully it doesn't make them uncomfortable, but I'm just writing notes about what they're saying, their family, you know, good and bad. I'm really trying to soak that up, because I would like to say I don't, but I would love to say I had a photographic memory, but I can't. So I write a ton of notes, but I really try to, you know, to answer your question, I try to learn the organization as quickly as possible, keep my mouth shut, because I really don't, you know, I don't know about the history. I don't know what happened a month ago or 10 months ago, and try to learn as quickly as possible. At the same time, I don't want to just kind of just sit on the sidelines and be a learner, because it takes a year, 2 years for any of us to really get to know an organization. Maybe not 2 years, a little bit less, but to listen and then to look for ways to try to contribute as quickly as possible. That's probably common sense, kind of obvious answer, but it's such a good question, because, you know, we'd like to think, you know, that we can stay somewhere for 10 years, or, you know, that we're going to be at this location forever. But, you know, life is crazy. You know, you'll find, you know, we'll be changing, maybe not moving around the country, you know, but definitely moving, you know, to other opportunities at a pretty frequent basis. But for me, again, it kind of comes back to a little bit of what I was saying earlier. For me, it's most important to learn about the people, to try to meet them where they're working, and then really work hard and study and try to soak up the organization as quickly as possible. Because, you know, Tamara, it's probably the same for you. If you've met somebody for the first time, regardless of what position they're in or you're in, the next time you see them, whether that's a day or a week or a month or, you know, 6 months, you want to be on your, and you want to know, you know, you want to soak up what was exchanged the first time. And if you can remember that, my mind is, maybe it's because it may be a function of age too, but if you can come back to them and remember maybe their spouse's or their sweetheart's name, or that they've got 2 children, or that they've, you know, they just got to this position, you know, not having to kind of repeat that, just first of all, it just tells them that you care about them, you know, that they're very, you know, that they're important to you. That's sort of an intangible, you know, just an intangible quality that not everybody has, but it's something that can be developed over time. So I'm rambling a little bit, but it's such a good question. I think for me, again, it's when you make the transition, for me, it's about learn the people, keeping my mouth shut, you know, not trying to do too much too quickly, but then looking for ways to contribute, because I don't want to, you know, just be wasting everybody's time. That's me. Does that resonate at all with you, Tambria? I mean, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I just started at Southern in January. That was the reason for my question.
Oh, excellent. Well, welcome. I get to tell you, well, maybe you're at Baton Rouge before, but I get to say to you, welcome to Baton Rouge.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mark, Walt Holiday, that's great advice. I apply that to my life at home. Keep my mouth shut, learn on the fly, and contribute where I can. It's definitely served me well. But just kind of piggyback, because I was thinking along the same lines in terms of when you sharing Mr. Corrigan's transition to West Point, you know, and we're in the military, I guess the chain of command really kind of is extremely important, and how it's implemented. But then, so is the transition easy? Would you feel like the transition would probably be easier moving into the military, or kind of what you've done in terms of moving from the military to South Carolina, where you're now, there is a chain of command in higher ed, but you're dealing with the deans, you're dealing with faculty,
Yeah.
like, where it's just a little bit different than the military? Was that challenging?
Yeah, that's a great question, Walt. And you may have, I'm not even sure, you may have crossed paths with Boo at some point. So you may have some first person. Boo gave me some great advice as I was making that transition, and it was kind of along the same lines. It's almost identical to what I said to Tambry earlier about really immersing yourself in the people. Not trying to do too much, all that kind of advice. I felt like the transition from West Point, if I didn't go to West Point and I would have gone straight to military and higher education, I might have had a tough one. That sort of in between at West Point was really helpful because I felt very comfortable in higher education, sort of mechanics, the accreditation, working with athletics. I mean, West Point, the cadets are incredible. But there's a huge, military component to that as well, which I felt very comfortable. But so I think that helped my transition. The thing that I kept on getting warnings of was, shared governance, it's tough. Nothing moves fast. Nobody. Those kind of sort of common. I kind of call them misperceptions. I didn't feel that at South Carolina. I felt like the group. Shared governance, of course, but you have shared governance in military too. You have shared governance in basically every part of nobody, every organization works with some level of shared governance. But I felt the transition was it wasn't easy, but it wasn't that hard. I think it was more they probably thought I was going to come in and sort of the perception of a military mindset and everything is very chain of command, like you just mentioned. But I didn't really have that sort of feel coming out of the military, so I didn't necessarily bring that to South Carolina. Sorry, I rambled a little bit too, but I'm just kind of thinking through. To be honest, it was a very, very positive experience, and that's why, as I'm reflecting on it, I'm pretty happy with that stop. Any other questions? I won't ramble on this next one. Is there any others that I could do short? Can I call on anybody? Oh, that'll start. Our participants will go down, Jonathan.
I think seems like it should be good. Before everyone leaves as well, I would like to ask everyone if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to fill out our survey evaluation and conference evaluation, which could be scanned on both of these QR codes. Mr. Beiger, I want to say thank you again for the Power Hour this afternoon.
Thanks, Jonathan. Can I say one last thing?
Sure.
I would just to the group that's gathered, thanks for coming over into this little session, but I would really encourage you. I've only seen 3 firsthand, but our athletic department here at LSU is unbelievable. They are well led. They have amazing culture. It's just a really, really neat organization. And if you're thinking about, just kind of, comparing notes or looking at it or pursuing opportunities here in Baton Rouge, we'd love to see you. So go Tigers.
Thank you.
What do you think, Jonathan?
I thought everything went well. It was very informative and it was very interesting to hear your stories.
Well, hopefully I didn't, and it's tough Friday afternoon. I didn't want to, Zoom's tough, but hopefully it was good. I enjoyed it. So please tell Dorothy and everybody, thanks for the invitation. I did enjoy it. I did forget to tell them thank you for taking care of our student athletes, but hopefully they heard me say that up front, because that's a really that's an important calling and an amazing group of young men and women to take care of. So what they're doing is pretty important.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And We will have this session recorded too, so if you would like to have access to it later, or if any of the other participants that are still in here would like to have access to it, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to share the recordings with y'all.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Sorry I didn't go the full hour. Is that bad?
No, I think everything went well, so
All right.
thank you. Have a great afternoon and have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too, Jonathan. Nice to see you. Go Tigers.
Well, thank you.